Cynthia, you're visiting us again here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we'd be very interested to hear what you see as our, positioned down here, our place in the contemplative field of things, and perhaps what would continue to support people here, each person here, to continue their own post-holding for both Aotearoa and the world.
It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful invitation to explore that. And of course it feels so strange and wonderful to come from a world and a half away from, you're at 44 south latitude, and I'm at 44 north, east. So it's really different corners of the universe. But I think there are two things, since I think it's neither appropriate nor necessary, nor possible even, for me as one of your teachers to be here micromanaging, riding herds on things. It's not possible. It's not good stewardship ecologically. It's not good stewardship spiritually. The whole question is how one plants living seeds that can grow in their own native soil to become their own plants, and that don't require constant pruning and tending from another place. So I would say that for the duration, just practically, one of the most important things that can be done is to create a container where practice goes on on a regular basis. And in places and in venues where it's supported by people who already come with deep understanding of the pathway and of the deep journey into a transformed selfhood that emerges necessarily out of serious practice. One of the highlights of my time here this time and the time before was working with the beautiful people at the Te Moata Retreat Center in the Coromandel, because in this beautiful Buddhist anchored center, there's a strong and reverent understanding of mindful work, conscious, practical presence, and a deep and respectful atmosphere both of silence and of participation, co-creation with and in the land. And all these things filter into the work to allow contemplation to fall into a rich soil of spiritual attentiveness. So for me, the idea of identifying really profound places and partners to work in all the corners of this island, little networks and cells, from North Island to South Island, gathering in often very small pieces and then coming together in larger segments, not around a guest dignitary that jet sets in, but around an absolutely fierce commitment to the transformative synergy of practice itself. Regular times to do deeper meditation, regular times to do conscious work, to work at pieces of the puzzle, to work on the Lectio Divina, to work on the individual components that create a deeper spiritual attentiveness within the person, and to work in a way so that everybody takes responsibility for this, not only individually, so I'm improving my own prayer life or contemplative life, but collectively that you're building a container that then is ready to hold teachings from guest teachers without being destabilized by it. So much at one level, but even as I speak, I realize that I'm working out of that same old top-down, visiting professors from afar kind of model, that we come down to these outer ends of the universe and fill you with the great fullness of our European contemplative tradition that you guys are such a backwater of. But in point of fact, that's not so. And the work that I most cherish nowadays is my invitations to come to New Zealand, Aotearoa, and South Africa, and places where people are really wrestling hard with the emerging phase of contemplation, particularly as it jostles hard up against other traditions, indigenous traditions, whole different thought categories, and new ways of being a human being. It's quite true that in the Christian tradition, contemplation has largely been brokered and conceived of in terms of Western and European monastic categories. It's clear that that kind of model is sort of coming to the end of a phase of its development. Monasteries themselves are not by and large thriving. More and more contemplation has already been thrust out of the nest into active dialogue with lay people in the world. And in the process has begun to bring back all sorts of new bearing points with regard to embodiment, with regard to sexuality, with regard to relationality. So already in the intersection between cultural, between reference points, new growth has happened. Even more so down in these lands, this land so beautifully suffused in Maori presence, with a beautiful tradition of prayer and spiritual development, which we were able at Te Moata to weave together in ways that were, I think, coming very closely to being a full weaving. And to bring back from this something that changes not just how we present the content of contemplation, but is actually participating in the changing of contemplation itself. How we understand it in a world struggling toward oneness. In a spiritual culture, particularly in Christianity, trying so hard to escape its colonial cultural reference points and to be reborn as part of this great evolutionary movement toward the face of humanity. So part of the method in my madness and calling for you to really work together and work in your groups and to work on your own and to empower each other is not just so that you're kind of doing your homework between the visits of the teacher, but so that you recognize that in a powerful way, you are the teachers. And that what you have to bring through the world in your patient jostling up against each other and fusion of the cultures and the work that you bring to create a structure which is not top-down dependent on guest artists from away, but grows out of your own native wisdom, is going to be a structure which mirrors back to the world in a whole new way where we're going. So I ask you to come together, I ask you to be intentional, and I ask you to really cut any of the cords that tie you to some presumed way of doing it correctly, and to allow your grounded heart to carry you where it will. Thank you and bless you.
We are one world, and there is a sense here in this land that we contribute in our own innocent backwater way to the larger global picture. And while you might be 44 above and we're 44 below, or whatever that was, there really is an extraordinary synergy. And I guess here we pray for the long life of all teachers, including all of us. So thank you indeed.
Thank you. And let's just, for the fun of it, record, how's the song go? Te aroha, te